Good morning, everybody. It is a wonderful, chilly day here in Toronto, driving into work. And I was listening to a podcast this morning by my good friend Ryan Mickler, and he's interviewing the author of Atomic Habits, James Clear. It's a powerful book, a powerful conversation. I'm going to share it in the Instagram feed for those of you who follow. And if you're on the YouTube channel, my Instagram feed is at lifestyle.evo. Anyway, one of the things that they talk about in the podcast, and I've spent a lot of time working on, and actually it comes up in some of the work that I do with the guys, is the identity that we associate with ourselves when we're trying to accomplish certain things, and the types of narratives that we have with ourselves. And I think it's something that it's an interesting concept, in that when I talk to people about the power of creating a positive identity for yourself, it's usually met with a lot of eye rolling, and people go, well, that's woo-woo, whatever that means, and it's too esoteric and it's not tangible enough, and I'm not sure that I buy it. Except most of us, particularly those who are in a position or are trying to level up, have really shitty internal personal identities. The way that they identify themselves is really quite toxic. And well, what a surprise. You're actually living up to those realities, to that expectation that you've set for yourself. So if it works to bring you down, why can't it work to bring you up? So I had a lot of, and I don't think we realize we do it. There was a long time where, for me, it was like, as a writer, it was like, I'm a horrible speller and I'm horrible at grammar. Horrible at spelling, horrible at grammar. And I used that almost as a subconscious excuse to not write. I've always identified as like a chubby guy, as the guy who was always kind of fat. And while I still have a lot of work to do, and it's still a struggle, changing the internal narrative from I'm a chubby guy who's trying to get fit to I'm a fit guy who just has some work to do. When you tell yourself that enough times, and I'm not talking like personal morning affirmations, that works for some people, but I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about the narrative that you have with yourself. When you start to identify yourself as someone who is fit, who has that potential to be fit, you just have work to do, it's amazing the switch that can happen, and the type of things that we associate or identify with can really be powerful. I'll give you a really good example, and it's such a silly thing, but looking back, it was a major issue for me. Is when I was working at a brokerage at the beginning of my career, I worked really, really hard, and I was really stressed out, and I burnt the candles at both ends, and that's fine. It was an important step. But when I would get really, really stressed out, or when I was kind of in when I thought I was in the zone, I'd run downstairs, I'd grab 2 Red Bulls and a big pack of M&Ms, and that would be my fuel. Man, how little did I know. And my identity became the guy who, when he's in the zone, he grabs 2 Red Bulls, a pack of M&Ms, and he gets shit done. And that became so ingrained that I was automatic. I didn't realize how often I was doing that every single day. And aside from like a giant money drag and money suck, no surprise, all of a sudden I looked up and I was like, wow, you're 40, 50 pounds overweight. So the guy who's getting it done with Red Bulls and M&Ms, that was an identity that I had created for myself, and it influenced my behavior and it influenced my habits to a degree where it was just undermining my health and my mental sanity and all these sorts of things. So when I finally woke up to that, and I was able to, and it's funny, Ryan talks about this in his podcast, and I've heard him say this before, and it's something that I've done as well, is where I told myself, high performers don't put that crap in their bodies, or high performers don't need that stuff. Look, do I enjoy, a soda or pop every now and then? Every now and then. Do I enjoy an M&M every now and then? I do. Something I really like. But it's no longer tied to the identity of me as a high-performing person. It was just like, high-performing people don't need that stuff. High-performing people don't require that. And then I was able to disassociate that bad habit with my personal identity of being a high performer. And I wonder how many times we do this, where we just sort of say to ourselves, oh, I'm this, or I'm that. And how can you flip that script? You know, I'll be honest, I talked with my wife about this. She's always said her whole life, I suck at math, I suck at math, I just can't get math. And I said to her, I'm like, you know, you probably suck at math because you keep telling yourself you suck at math. And you know what? Saying to yourself, I'm good at math, or I can learn this, isn't instantly going to make you a mathematician. But it is absolutely going to start to knock down the barriers that are between you and figuring out whatever problem it is that you're trying to solve. And she's right. She's changed that narrative. And I haven't heard her say, oh, I suck at math, when she's figuring stuff out in her budget, or when she's doing work at her job that requires her to do calculations. She's like, it's incredible how more quickly I'm able to solve the problems. She was always able to figure it out, but it's so much easier for her now that she's stopped telling herself she's shitty at math. And the narratives that we say, I don't even think that we're aware that we say it. And it is almost like and like I talked about the other day when I talked about saying things like, oh, must be nice, or easier said than done. That internal narrative is just another layer of excuse that you are building up to justify inaction. If you're overweight and you're like, I'm just a fat person, I'm just a fat guy. Well, or I'm big boned, or whatever the hell stories we tell ourselves, that is just adding more layers and barriers to justify not achieving your goals. And if you want to evolve, if you want to level up, again, that's why you're here, you need to banish all of that shit from your life. And I try to not say you must, you should, blah, 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 blah. On this one, you should. You got to get rid of that stuff. That internal narrative, particularly where it's identified with your, with your personal identity. If you say, like, another one that for me was hanging in the balance is, again, pardon the language, but I had this internal narrative of like, I'm going to fuck this up. I'm going to fuck this up. Whatever it is, I'm going to fuck it up. And I don't know where that came from. I don't have a history of failure, but for whatever reason, that internal narrative, that identity as being someone who will eventually have a massive catastrophic failure, held me back. And to be honest, in many ways, sometimes still holds me back from taking risks and moving forward. Does that mean that I may not fail at some point? Of course, everyone is going to experience a level of failure. But when you hang that over you as being the guy who's eventually going to fuck this up, that's a dangerous, toxic personal identity that you're associating with yourself. We wouldn't allow other people to talk to us like that. If someone came up to me and they're like, whatever, you can't do that, you're just a fat guy, that would piss me off. If someone said to me, don't worry, you can't do this job, you don't know math, that would piss you off. You can't write that article, you suck at spelling. It should light a fire. Yet we excuse the language within ourselves. So identify, where in your life are you having this sort of negative narrative that is manipulating and really disintegrating your personal identity? And how can you flip that? How can you flip that on its head to start identifying? Like, a good one for me was, I would hit snooze all the time. I could hit snooze 19 times. Ironically, I learned my 9 times tables because I knew how many times I could hit snooze, and my snooze is 9 minutes long for some reason. That's how I learned the 9 times tables, because I also kind of sucked at math. But when you start to have the narrative of, I'm the kind of guy who doesn't hit snooze. I'm the kind of guy who gets up, and whether it sucks or whether I'm wide awake, I get up. When the alarm goes off, I get up. I've made a decision and a commitment to myself to get up and do certain things. I'm the kind of guy who gets up when the alarm goes off. And I very, very rarely hit snooze anymore. Not perfect, but I very rarely do it. What kind of person are you? I'm the kind of man, I'm the kind of woman, I'm the kind of person who does this. Own that. Be a part of that. Banish that negative toxicity. And do not let yourself be a 2 Red Bull and a bag of M&M kind of performer. I hope you have a wonderful day. I want to hear your comments below in terms of what those internal narratives have been or how you've used this to your advantage. And I will talk to you tomorrow.